Welcome back for another episode of Think on These Things. We are in a process of journeying through the scriptures together as we are conducting this Bible reading plan. And this is a moment where we pause and take a break in order to share with you some of the highlights that we ourselves have discovered as we've walked through this devotionally and seen different truths that have stood out to us from these pages. So we're reading in both Old and New Testament. And in this particular episode, I wanted to pause in Job chapter 7. Job is a rich book that's all about not only suffering, but really it's a book about the sovereignty of God. In the midst of this, Job is experiencing these horrible difficulties. And this is what he says in Job 7, verse 7. Remember that my life is a breath, O God. And then he says this, my eyes shall never see happiness again. I mean, that's a pretty distraught statement. But yet it's a statement that many of us can probably relate to, right? The reality is, as I was reading, I was thinking about the fact that no one is exempt from the brokenness of this world. We all experience the highs and we all experience the lows at some point in time, regardless of how devoted we are to the Lord our God. We're going to experience the loss of a loved one. We're going to experience diagnosis of some dreaded disease. Some of us, we're going to experience a job loss. We have these moments of life that bring this unbelievable dread. Divorce, miscarriages, family conflicts, a wayward child. I can still remember the sound of my mother screaming when she found out my sister had died in an accident. And in those dark moments, life presses in such a way. And here's what we need to remember from Job among many things. Or let me rephrase that. Here's what I need to remember from Job is that in the midst of these dark moments, I cannot trust my feelings. I can't trust my feelings when I'm experiencing the overwhelming moment of life. I have to frame those feelings within the context of God's truth, and God's truth has to carry more weight in that moment than the way that I feel. And here's something else that's interesting. When we are experiencing those dark times and we live faithfully, even though everything in our being wants to cry out and give up, those moments of faithfulness in the midst of suffering bring a megaphone to our faith. And what we see in Job as he progresses here in Job 7, he's like, shall my eyes ever see happiness again? And he feels unbelievably desperate and he's full of despair and he wants to give up. And yet here's what we find just a little bit later in Job chapter 19, verse 25. I know that my Redeemer lives and that in the end, he will stand on the earth. My friends, that is not only Job's hope, but that is our hope. And so regardless of where you find yourself today, whether it's in good times or bad times, the reality is bad times will come. And when they do, will we allow the truth of God's word to frame our feelings? Because one day Jesus is coming and he will stand on the earth as Redeemer and as King, and he will usher us into his good kingdom. And we will hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. That should be encouragement to us today, regardless of what circumstance we find ourselves in. Well, I hope this has been an encouragement to you. If you'd like to know more about the John W. Rawlings School of Divinity, please check us out at www.liberty.edu/divinity.